Hello, we saved you a seat. Welcome to Train Station at 8, a place to gather with friends and talk about music for a while, particularly video game music. This is episode 14, and today we're going to be talking about changes in video game music. For example, if a series has music that stays the same from game to game, or if the music really changes a lot from game to game, what we think about that series we think exemplify this, and so on. Joining me for this today is my brother, Steven. Hello, Steven.
Hello, my brother, Brian.
A guest we have had before, Jayson Napolitano of Scarlet Moon Studios. Hello, Jayson.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No problem. It is our honor.
This is not just a guest we've had before. This is our first guest.
That's a good point. I should have given him more fanfare. Do you want to, add some trumpets or something? I was thinking in post, but what the hey.
That's right, the 1st and 14th, or 15th. I think you guys were debating.
Probably 14th.
15th, I think? I don't know.
I don't
We've had
know.
multiple guests on single episodes, so it's hard to count. But our first and our last, because this is the final episode.
Oh, whoa. Let's not start any rumors within our own society.
All right.
But hey, it has been a while though. So Jayson, how about you remind all of our lovely listeners at home what it is you do?
Oh, well, Scarlet Moon Productions. Now, last time I talked to you guys, it had two arms. There was a record label and a game audio PR company.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a third arm. So I guess three arms, or maybe maybe appendage. I don't know what we want to call this third part. But there's a third part, which is an artist group. And I'm representing some composers trying to find them jobs in the video game industry and indie games and big games. And we got guys that you guys know of for sure. We got Vince DiCola, who did Rocky IV and Transformers the movie from 1986.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We got Hiroki Kikuta of Secret of Mana fame and Hitoshi Sakimoto of Valkyria Chronicles, Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy XII. Wow. So working with these guys and some other talented composers, I'm trying to find them work. So we got the three branches, and
that's pretty amazing.
And yeah, so that's kind of what's been new. And E3 just happened last week, and had a good time talking to a lot of indie devs about getting these composers working on some stuff. So hopefully we'll be hearing some new music from them soon.
That is awesome. I'm so happy that you've opened up that third appendage, or whatever we're calling it. It's just
the nose? I don't know.
Yeah. It's going to be like an Octodad company before we know it.
There you go. That's the goal.
I just was looking at your site yesterday, and I was so happy to see all these interesting names directly attached to Scarlet Moon. It got me. So.
Yeah, this is really. How long has Scarlet Moon been around at this point?
Ooh, well, we got it started at the end of last year, but kind of the real launch was at MagFest, so January 2014.
Wow, so you got all this going in 6 months? That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably been since August or so is when we really got rolling with the PR side, but the artist group we just launched the week before E3, with the idea that we would be going into E3 and being able to talk about hey, you're working on a game. How would you like to have the sound of, Transformers, or how would you like to have the sound of Secret of Mana in your game? And of course, people are like, oh my god, that guy's my idol. So,
That's great.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun trying to seeing the reaction from people and being, well, oh wow, I can have them work on my game. There's an easy way to do that now.
Yeah, there's a direct source to go to. It's very cool.
That's really great. Next time we need a podcast theme song, we know who to go to.
Yeah!
There you go.
Once we get tired of your skills, Brian, we've got great.
My very limited skills.
Hey, I like your acoustic cover of the Animal Crossing song, but, it's that versus, Secret of Mana, so...
Oh yeah, maybe he could do a version of the Animal Crossing.
Yeah! Oh, now we're talking. Okay, we'll talk business after the show.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a format here on Train Station 8 wherein we ask 8 questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with question number 1. What have you been listening to? Steven, my brother.
Thank you for calling out a name, because we're on Skype and I have no idea who you're pretending to look at. As I mentioned last week, I found that artist via Dan Floyd, Aerotan. And she was doing that sort of medieval-ish, kind of lyrical stuff that I like so much. And so, naturally, I decided to purchase it, because it was very good. I bought the Rain Dancer album, and I listened all the way through, and then, just looped it and went all the way through again. It's some of the
So you don't like it much?
I hate it. It's drivel. I just wanted to bring it up here so we can throw it under a bus and drive it over a few times. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's really beautiful. Like, it's very, very,
beautiful?
heartfelt. Heartfelt.
Oh.
Heartfelt. That's what I'm looking for. Very heartfelt. Like I said last week.
So for people who don't know, what kind of music is this? Are we talking like polka?
No, I would put it in, as I kind of described last time, it's sort of like bard-like music. The sorts of things that you might expect.
Oh wait, we've had another week to think of a name for what this is, and we still haven't quite gotten one.
If there's a succinct name, then listeners let me know, but it's
like medieval tavern music with a Celtic flair is what we're talking,
there
right?
you go. Medieval Celtic music with...
I think we should call it a bard-like.
A bard-like. Yeah, that could be a new genre.
There you go. And then there's bard-like music, which I really enjoy.
Oh my gosh, it's a whole rabbit hole. But anyway, like some of it has like full lyrics, some of it is more just instrumental, and it's just it's captivating. I can't recommend it enough. So that's Rain Dancer was the album.
Okay.
I also listened to the newest OC remix.
I listened to that too. Portrait of a Plumber.
The Super Mario 64 tribute.
Yes.
Now, Super Mario 64 has perhaps one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. We talked about it a lot with the Marcato Bros when they were on the show.
Yes, yes.
So it has a very high standard to meet, I guess. And I feel like, if I'm going to be completely honest, some of the songs in this album kind of missed the boat for me.
Mm-hmm.
But there were enough really, really good ones that made me super excited that I almost don't care.
They went with a lot of, like, I didn't see a lot of the OC remix regulars on here, at least doing compared used to seeing. Like, there was no Sixto, there was no Level 99, there was no...
Some of the really big names that we really like.
Yeah, DJ Pretzel, a lot of those weren't there.
Have you been keeping up with OC remix recently, Jason?
It's been a long while. I usually kind of peek in on the albums and see what's going on because, like you're saying, there's so few tracks that miss the mark or whatever, but it's because really it's just a collection of remixes. It's not really like a cohesive thing. So it's not like you can just listen to track one and say, this is awesome, I'm going to love the whole thing. You really have to invest a lot of time in listening to the whole thing all the way through and picking out the ones you like.
Exactly.
So that's something it's been a long time. I've been kind of involved with them on the back end trying to get some remixes posted for some stuff that I've been working on and stuff, but I haven't been following a lot of the remixes, even though I'm friends with a lot of the people who do have stuff up on there.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I'm a little bit obsessive, I think, about OC Remix. I'm always checking back and downloading all of the music. And when an album comes out, I'm like, okay, well now I know what I'm listening to this afternoon.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of great free music, so it's a pretty good source to have.
A few, to me, really big names on there that did a great job. Like Halsey was there at least once, maybe
twice. He was there twice.
I'm not actually sure how to pronounce this dude's name, but it's either Sir Jordanius or Sir Jordanius. I'm not sure, I guess.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy his work. And Peach's House Party was a song that sampled... Because, OC Remix has this thing where they try to avoid samples from the game too much. And, it's kind of an inside joke whenever someone overdoes it. And I feel like this song intentionally just blew through the roof with the samples of Mario. The whole song was Mario yelling. There was stuff like that made me appreciate the album a lot.
Yeah. I think it had some definite good moments in it. I really enjoyed the remix of the Road to Bowser, which was basically just the Road to Bowser with dubstep in the background.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the thing is, it was such a high caliber of game that they were remixing that the album itself didn't seem like far above most of themselves.
And is Jason wondering what the horrific noise in the background is? Jason is outside at the moment, so if you hear any like sirens, helicopters, or people screaming, that's probably it.
He is also
coming to you live from the streets of San Diego.
That makes it sound way cooler.
Yeah.
And he is also a national fugitive, which is why there are the police dogs and police cars. Helicopters.
Wait a second.
Yes.
It's all falling into place.
He's very dedicated to our podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it. So yeah, that's what I've been listening to. Portrait of a Plumber and Rain Dancer.
Cool. Yes, I've been listening to Portrait of a Plumber. I haven't had a lot of time to listen to other music unless you count that amazing poker song from Jet Set Radio Future.
What, you just been listening to that song on loop or something?
No, I listened to it once, but it was very memorable.
Oh, okay. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen.
But I have been listening to music as I'm playing through different games that like stand out to me as I'm hearing them.
That counts.
I recently played through Minish Cap again. Legend of Zelda Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance, and that soundtrack really stood out to me. It's interesting in one respect because it was a Capcom soundtrack.
Oh.
So it was not done by Nintendo. It was done by, Capcom's in-house composers.
That's
or one
really
of them.
Interesting. I did not make that connection.
And he did a very, very good job with it. I just love Game Boy soundtracks, how they sound. That chip they have for it has a very distinctive quality.
It's like such a delightful, harmonizing, soft.
Yeah,
sound.
I found it was like a really good compromise between actual instruments and, chip tune.
Yeah.
So you can really tell what instrument it's trying to be, but it still has this quality to it that's very electronic and very enjoyable.
Sega actually, in my opinion, kind of epitomized the sound of the Game Boy in a lot of ways with its song soundtracks.
Those are fantastic.
A little bit of jazz, always kind of this organ sound that they'd use. I always go back to that.
And I've also been playing through The Witcher, which has a wonderful soundtrack.
Really? Is it like Celtic or I don't know.
Oh, it's hard to say exactly.
Is it bard-like?
Is it bard-like? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
This game is a bard-like, so it's, yeah. It has it's very much like a BioWare-esque, a Bio-like, I don't know, Western RPG sort of soundtrack, but it instills it with a certain, kind of like mountainous, maybe Celtic, I'm not exactly sure, majesty to a lot of it. It has a lot more like mystery and like atmosphere to it. I find that a lot of other Western RPG soundtracks tend to do.
It's not like just the town song or something epic or something. It has
like Dragon Age Origins and stuff. Felt very somber and kind of brown and closed in the whole time. And this one feels a lot more expressive and mysterious, so I'm really enjoying it.
That's interesting. Okay, cool.
But yeah, that's probably most of what I've been listening to. It honestly hasn't been a very music-heavy week for me. Unfortunately. That probably means it was a bad week, but...
Oh, dear. Yeah, whenever there's not enough music in my life, I think my Sims-style meters all start to drop. I get more sad, I get angry, I have to start using the bathroom more often, it's weird.
Alright. Question number 2.
Whoa, hey!
What?
There's someone else in the room, Brian. Jeez.
Oh, geez, you're right. I'm sorry, Jason. What have you been listening to?
Oh, a lot of stuff. I've been listening to a lot of a lot of stuff from the label and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing PR for, but to skip over that stuff.
Right.
To not talk about myself too much. I've been listening to a lot of...
Talk about yourself.
Yeah, because we encourage selflessness here, clearly.
I've been actually listening to a lot of Square Enix stuff. They just had a bunch of albums come out. So there was Rise of Mana, which is their new, free-to-play Mana game that came out in Japan.
Okay.
And it's actually really interesting because they have Tsuyoshi Sekito working on the soundtrack. And, he's one of the few guys left at Square Enix. But there's a track each from past Mana composers. So there's a track from Hiroki Kikuta, there's a track from Yoko Shimomura, and there's a track from Kenji Ito. And so it's great hearing their, like, signature mana sounds. But then also, like, Sakito, he did, like, a really good job emulating that whole kind of new agey sound that they all kind of created together. So it's actually a really, really good soundtrack. I'm really impressed. And they got the theme song by Kokia, which is kind of like this new agey vocalist in Japan. So it all really works together really well. So that was really good. I'm listening to their, the SQ Swing album that they put out. Are you guys familiar with the SQ series?
No, I'm not actually.
So they have, like, the record label Square Enix has this remix series, that started with Love SQ, they did More SQ, Chill SQ, Beer SQ, Cafe SQ, SQ Chips, and it goes on and on and on. But they're basically, it's kind of like if you got 10 guys from OC Remix together and said, we're going to do Square Enix stuff, and they each did a track and some loose theme like chill out music, or these are songs you're going to go to the tavern with or whatever. Okay. It's kind of like that, but it's Japanese artists that are associated like with the artists at Square Enix.
So are they're remixing existing music, or is it original stuff?
It's all Square Enix stuff. Okay. Well, it's actually all Squaresoft stuff. For whatever reason, anytime they put anything with Square Enix on it, like, it always never includes Enix material, but anyway. So right. SQ Swing is supposed to be like the swing album. It's kind of funny because there's like one track on the album that's swing. It's Johnny C. Bad from Final Fantasy VI? That's Chrono Trigger, right? Johnny C. Bad.
I have no authority on this. We'll say yes.
It's from Chrono Trigger. It's the guy from the... Okay, yeah, so you guys don't know. So it's funny because they put the...
frog.
They put together these albums that are supposed to be themed in some way, but like usually they really miss the mark. But that's okay because the album's still really good. There's like they got the forest theme from Secret of Mana on it. They have it seems like every single album that they put out has Megalomania from Live a Live on it.
Oh, so, man, people keep talking about that. I still don't know what it is, but it sounds interesting.
Wait, Live Alive, right? Live Alive. I don't know how.
I don't know. I've heard people pronounce it 5 different ways at this point, so.
I don't know. I need to play it at some point because everybody says it's so great and has some great twists and whatnot, but.
See, that's the thing, I feel like I need to play through all these Square games just so I can listen to the music and all the arrangements, because the amount of stuff, the remixes and concerts and just general, consensus about the Square soundtracks is unparalleled, and I'm missing out by not knowing the source material.
Yeah, I mean, they republished the Live Alive soundtrack last year. It had never been, it got printed on some old label, and then they never reprinted it. So finally Square Enix put it out on their own label. So now that you can actually pick that up, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's one of those soundtracks where I needed the context, because I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine. So, but yeah, it's this remix series kind of, they remix the usual suspects. It's always there's always multiple Final Fantasy tracks, lots of Secret of Mana, lots of Chrono Trigger, etc. But every once in a while you'll get something, different thrown in. It would be really cool if they included the Enix stuff like I was talking about. I guess the last thing I'd mention would be the Boot Heel Heroes soundtrack by Jake Kaufman. I don't know, are you guys familiar with that one?
Oh yeah, I am. Now we're in territory I understand, the Kaufman.
It's so cool. I mean, it's cool that, there's not really a set way to write music from the SNES, but I guess he put a lot of time and work into it and trying to emulate that sound, and it's really good. It's really good. It's really kind of fun.
That's too.
Yeah, everything he does is somehow good, even though he does so many different things.
Jake has an extreme, almost magical ear for music, where you tell him to pick a style, and he'll get it down, like his Blood Rain soundtrack. They said, Castlevania. And you said, okay, and just wrote some new Castlevania music. No problem. It's like, it's
right. You can just
Well, he's been dreaming of doing that his whole life, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's been practicing, so...
So it's really, it's kind of like a Western thing. It's not really like my kind of style of something I would normally want to listen to, but it's just so cool to hear something sound like the SNES and, great melodies and...
Exactly. Kind of the same boat for me, where I'm like, this isn't really my thing. I'm trying to evoke, like, Square RPGs and then, like, the Western sound.
So is he just the Shadows theme over and over again?
No, it's not even that cool. It's like upbeat, like twangy guitars and clapping percussion and finger snaps and
clapping,
like upbeat whistling. And yeah. I don't know if there is any whistling. There has to be. I haven't gotten all the way through it yet.
Okay.
So
yeah, if there's no whistling, I will eat my cowboy hat.
Your 10-gallon. All right. What else, Jason? Anything else interesting on that?
No, that's, it's a lot of other stuff. There's this Japanese artist I'm really into named Ken Hirai, and he's like a male vocal, pop singer in Japan. And he releases, it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
And, he just put out this album called Ken's Bar 3. Which is obviously a series. This is the third album. But what he does is he takes like Japanese standards or in a lot of cases US pop songs or whatever and does them usually on piano and him singing in English. And so on this one he has Virtual Insanity, Jamiroquai song that he does a version of, and then he's also got Killing Me Softly. And it's funny because, like the first two albums, his accent when he's singing in English is like really like strong, like Japanese accent.
Yeah.
But it's you can tell it's like slowly getting better. So with this album, it's a little better, but still,
cool.
I play it in my house. My wife's you're listening to this.
Why would you not listen to it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a guilty pleasure.
That's nice.
So that's it. That's pretty much what I've been listening to.
Cool. Yeah, that's quite a variety, and that only seems to be touching upon I listen to. But then, like, listening to music kind of seems to be a part of your job.
Yeah, it's true. And like the Square Enix stuff I'm reviewing on the blog, the Boot Hill Heroes I just picked up and listened to because I'm a huge fan of Jake's. Mm-hmm. And the Ken's Bar thing is like I spent money to buy this from Japan and. I'm just listening to this because I want to.
So, quick question. As someone who, does a lot of music for specific review and all that, do you spend a lot of time, like, dedicated listening to music and not multitasking or doing something else at the same time?
That's so interesting because my wife will be like, why are you on the computer for such a long time? I'm like, I have to listen to this. She's like, well, why do you have to listen to it, like, at the computer? And I'm like, well, I kind of need to, like, listen really closely because I'm trying to critique it, right? So,
right.
Yeah, and sometimes when you get something that's kind of ambient or whatever, you're listening, and all of a sudden you're 10 tracks in, and you're like, oh crap, like I didn't even notice.
I've done the same.
So sometimes that's a good thing if you're liking the atmosphere and whatever, but every once in a while, what I'll do is sometimes I'll listen to an album the first time through, and if something strikes me, I'll look up and see what the track title is. Yeah. And then, I'll give it a second listen through and listen a little more closely to everything. So when I write the review, I can be like, these few tracks really stood out as, really amazing and, attention grabbers.
Yep.
Whereas the rest of the album, if you listen really closely, they do some really intricate stuff. But, so you kind of have that going on. But yeah, you really have to sit there and listen and keep re-listening because sometimes if you're not paying attention and you're trying to multitask, you miss something.
There are so many layers to music. Like, so you're always going to, like, find something new as you listen to it again and again, depending on, like, what level you go in, be it just how they instrumentize something, or then, like, even, key changes and tempo changes and that sort of thing. So there are always going to be new layers to discover for a song. But you can only go in so deep if you're reviewing a lot of different music.
I remember back in the day when, I'm trying to think, it must have been VG Mix. I don't think OCR lets people regular people. Lets the community review stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember on like VG Mix, you were able to like go in and put your own review in there and whatever, and you get all these like 5-page reviews of a 3-minute remix about at 0:23 the percussion comes in, and it's really kind of like normal percussion, and but then at 0:32 like they add in the cowbell. And then so you have these really long reviews. And you're just kind of like, well,
do you understand the metaphorical weight of the cowbell? Do you? All right,
so you get these really like over the top reviews where they're going down by the second.
That reminds me of when I was writing the feature for Critical Gamer, No Tune Unturned. The whole idea there was to go take like 10 or so tracks per episode and sort of like not pick them apart but go into detail, so I'd often like reference very specific instruments and very specific parts of the music, and I'm like, I'm not sure if anyone other than me cares about how Grant Kirkhope brought in a different instrument for this xylophone, but I'm going to
imagine a game review like that. At 2 hours and 30 minutes, they introduce this new enemy type. Let me describe to you what the enemy type is. It's like, no.
And then at 43 hours, they introduced the red palette swap version of that enemy that I liked so much.
You understand the metaphorical weight of the red palette swap. All right. Yeah, I do like that idea of, giving it a quick listen and then giving it a detailed one, because a lot of people are going to be listening to it kind of passively. So being able to know what moments jump out from that type of perspective seems valuable.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. Jumping on to question number 2 now, for real this time. What are some game series that haven't changed much musically?
I specifically struggled on if I should make you deal with the plural of series in this.
I didn't struggle, I just said it.
You just failed. There was no struggle involved.
No. I can fail very naturally.
So we're looking for game series that have pretty much stayed the same since the dawn of their conception.
Mm-hmm.
Jayson, do you want to jump in? And
yeah, I mean, one jumps out immediately to mind is Dragon Quest. And a part of that's because you have the same composer working on it, but it's like he developed a formula with the first game. This is Koichi Sugiyama we're talking about. He developed the formula in the first game, and that's basically been the formula for every game since. There's the Overture, which is the same theme for every Dragon Quest game.
Really?
Then there's the menu theme. Mm-hmm. Then there is the castle theme, the town theme, and the overworld theme, and the battle theme, and the dungeon theme. The only thing that's really changed is now there's like 3 dungeon themes and 3, but it's still like even the track listing is almost in the same exact order. Wow. So much so that King Records recently put out a box set of Dragon Quest. I think it was 1 through 9. It might have been 1 through 10, but it was sorted by category. So there was one CD of the overtures, CD of the castles, 1 CD of the towns. That's kind of
awesome. That's brilliant. And the funny
it's something called like the scene. It's called like the Dragon Quest scene selection box or something like that. So it's really funny.
It's amazing. Steve, what were you saying?
I was just saying for a series that sticks to the formula so closely with its music, the only real thing that's changing is the quality. And that just, kept spiking over and over again. You have like the old Famicom, original soundtrack, which is just so rudimentary. And then all the way like up to the modern ones, like the only soundtrack I'm really familiar with, being 8. And that's just like nowhere close to the original, obviously. It's like this beautiful work of art, and it's funny how things can stay the same and yet change so much to where you could barely recognize it.
Well, but wait, it goes deeper because Sugiyama was the first composer to put together a video game music concert because he's a classical composer by training. And so that first Dragon Quest game had an album called Dragon Quest Symphonic Suite.
Oh gosh.
And that was orchestral arrangements that were performed live in concert. And so basically what this box set is the symphonic suite versions of every soundtrack. And that's kind of like, I think that's really the definitive, like if I ever go back and listen to Dragon Quest music, I usually don't go listen to the original sound source. I go back and pick up the symphonic suite album.
Because it's sort of like, that's how the music was meant to be heard.
Yeah.
So he didn't even change that over the years. He's been doing that since the beginning.
Granted, there it is, the original sound source version. On the first albums that came out, there was basically the symphonic suite and then one 30-minute track that had, like, a guy walking around in the game.
That's great.
So,
That's fantastic.
So it had, like, every track in it, but I want to say there were in some of the versions.
That's fantastic.
So if you were looking for the original sound source, it was kind of a bummer because it's really long track. But yeah, so it really makes listening to every single Dragon Quest game has the flying thing, whether it's a flying ship or a magic carpet or whatever it is. Those ones are particularly good for sleeping.
Oh, really?
And I like the castle themes, kind of like, just to play. You have a whole album of this. They're kind of like, if you're just like lounging around, it's kind of cool to sit there and be like, yeah, I got this regal castle theme going on in my house. So you have a whole CD of that.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's what popped up to my mind when I first saw that. And it's part of the function is that it's the same composer. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. He's like in his late 80s.
Oh, wow.
So someday he's not going to be around to write the next Dragon Quest soundtrack. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
They'll probably just start reusing music and no one will notice.
There you go. Or maybe he's written like 20 games worth of music for them to use.
Some secret archive. That's actually an excellent answer because it puts it in such a stark contrast, like the years that have passed and the technical quality of the consoles.
That's
and
amazing.
yet the person behind it has been exactly the same.
Yep.
It's just been technology limiting him.
Well, here's
Steven?
an answer that's quite different in the sense that this is a series that has not been going on very long, all things considered, and has swapped composers multiple times, which is Soul Calibur.
I was... of course.
Oh,
That's
really,
the one
Brian?
that came out driving around in the car today, and I'm like, that'll be one no one thought of.
Aha! Except me. I'm Brian. How could I, of all people, not mention Soul Calibur?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's good. It's a good choice.
Because, the first, soundtrack, geez, who even did the first one? Let me look this up before I say something.
Koji Kondo.
Yeah, it was Koji Kondo who did the original Soul Calibur. I don't have the information.
John Williams.
It was John Williams who did the original. And that...
Kanye West.
Actually, if you really want to go back, you could go back to Soul Blade, which is...
Oh, yeah.
Still
Loved that
in the same
game.
Vein. But especially once you get to Soul Calibur, you have certain pieces that kind of are spiritually continued in every installment, like the Volvo song, for example.
Oh, right.
It's always this really creepy, kind of intense wailing in the background. Just the song that sounds wrong. The tempo's just off. And that has continued through different composers, through different games, through different consoles over the years.
Yeah, Duelists has made a lot of different reappearances.
Duelists tends to get remade a lot. It's probably still the best song in the whole series, as far as I'm concerned. And then, for example, like in Soul Calibur 5, they've brought on a bunch of different people, even bringing on Andrew Aversa, who is... has nothing to do with the original series. He's an American who started out on OC Remix essentially, and yet they gave him like the Fighter Select song.
But he had the Elysium theme too, which I think was my favorite track on the album. Actually,
yeah, that was Wait, was that the one that Jillian sang?
I don't know.
No, that was
I don't think so.
trying to think. That was like the ending credits or something. But yes, and even though he came from such a different background, it sounds so true to that, like, a tournament is starting, choose your fighter, dramatic, souls are blazing, music style.
That's a good point.
And I think it's mostly a good thing in this case that it is stuck so closely to that blueprint, because most of the soundtracks tend to still feel fresh and exciting, but they have that Soul Calibur heart that never seems to die, which is super neat. The soul still burns, you might say.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. And the soul still burns.
Now, that said, the series as a whole really needs to be kickstarted at this point. I feel like it's
like
slowly
literally
going downhill. And if that means bringing in a new musical style, I'm all for it. I just want to see that series have a chance to...
Stretch goal. John Williams will compose it if we get...
Back to the beginning, wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are some very good examples. Luckily, I don't have to come up with any because you guys.
And hey, we did a whole episode about one of these series, the Kirby episode.
Yeah, I was going to bring that one up too, but I was saying I'm not going to bring up anything Nintendo because we've been talking about Nintendo so much recently.
Yeah, we've been a bit on one.
I feel like a lot of the Nintendo soundtracks. I mean, you could even say that though. Yep. I mean, even though that's kind of like the technology thing has really changed the tools they've used, but really, like, you know, every Mario soundtrack is. It's upbeat, it's energetic, it's platforming, it's fun, it's that kind of sound. Yeah. Even though there have been different people contributing over the years, I think they do a good job of cohesion.
Oh, absolutely. And when they do change their style, it very much fits the game that they're changing it for.
Yeah.
So Mario is a very versatile fellow.
They can always go back to that, you know, core Mario-ness that everyone likes.
Core Mario-ness.
Core Mario-ness.
Question number 3. What are some game series that are now musically unrecognizable from their origins? That is a very interesting way to phrase that, Stephen.
It doesn't have to be literally unrecognizable, but, you know, something that you never guess.
Yeah.
What it used to be.
Jason, you have any ideas for this one?
Oh wow. Well, once you phrase it that way, it's like I have to think about this a little bit. I'll let you guys.
All right.
Talk while I think.
One, I mean, unrecognizable isn't going to go for any of these, but I think one that had a dramatic shift when they brought on a new composer was The Elder Scrolls. Between Daggerfall and Morrowind.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that there was an Elder Scrolls before Morrowind.
In Arena and Daggerfall, it was very much a very synthesized, like medieval. This ye old adventurer, not even kind of bard-like, very medieval ye old adventurer are going on your quest, kind of almost I don't quite want to say stuffy, but like kind of
stereotyped a little bit.
Yeah, almost just like stereotypical knight's quest kind of stuff. That
it was really good, though. It was really good.
Not criticizing it for what it was. I mean, from the genre, I listened to a bit of it. It was really great, but completely different from the atmospheric, ethereal kind of tones Jeremy Soule tried to bring.
That is true. Yeah, because that's a great example, because very much unlike Dragon Quest, unlike Soul Calibur, they made a conscious effort to completely divert the soul of that series.
Yeah. They wanted to stop feeling like, you know, a D&D type thing and wanted to start feeling like their own world, I think, a lot more in Morrowind. With its own kind of sense of atmosphere.
I feel like they really wanted to say what this series is about is the journey, this exploration, this grand world.
Yeah, I think they didn't have as much of a sense of place and stuff like Daggerfall because they're having to create this entire world, so they couldn't create a soundtrack around one place. They had to create it around basically the Elder Scrolls, which is a very medieval RPG world, so they went with a kind of, you know, Western knights and castles sort of soundtrack for it. But man, there were some good songs from that.
That's a good one because, you know, it's a single world. And so you can't you could say, oh, well, Final Fantasy, but then every one of those games are unrelated.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's actually, that's like a really good example because it is a one world, different points in history of that world. But, you know, they changed the sound of that world and it still worked.
Yeah. I think another one that was very similar in its change was Warcraft. because it kind of did the exact same thing in World of Warcraft compared to Warcraft 1 and 2 especially, which is they had that medieval sound, and then in World of Warcraft, they kept some of it. It was definitely more similar than the Elder Scrolls did, but they switched to a much more ambient sound because they were making MMO.
Especially in the beginning of World of Warcraft, I feel like they were sticking a little closer. Like when you look at some of the tunes, like that bum ba bum ba 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 bum ba ba.
Yeah, that is from one of the Warcraft.
Yeah, and they brought that into it, so they eased into their new style. But when they brought,
now,
like Jayson and Russell, it
once you get to like Shards of the Exodar and the stuff they did for Burning Crusade, it's unrecognizable from what they were doing in Warcraft 1 and 2.
Well, I've got an example of my own here.
Really?
Which is my beloved Sonic the Hedgehog series.
Oh, yeah.
And one day in 1999, they decided to reinvent the Sonic the Hedgehog series. It went 3D with Sonic Adventure. They brought on Jun Senaway and his band Crush 40 and changed forever the face of Sonic music. And most people would probably lament that as a terrible tragedy.
Yes.
And just go back to the good old Genesis days, which is like very funky and in a way kind of 80s, kind of had the Michael Jackson thing going on.
Yep.
But also would, delve into, like, oh, this is the ruins level and that sort of thing. Then it shifted to much more cheesy, really, I didn't even want to use cheesy. I regret using cheesy as the first word because there's more.
Because that's what everyone uses as the first word.
Pigeonholed as that, but it was also extremely jazzy and just straight up rocking. There's live instruments. Like you listen to like the casino level, and it's like this like frantic big band thing going on. Obviously, like the theme song had like a band playing a very, very dramatic rock song.
Yeah.
Ever since then, the series has been chasing this sort of, I don't even know what to call it. I feel like it tends to shift through the games, but it always comes back to like, what's the modern style of music? What's the modern popular rock style? And they'll always bring that back for like the theme song or something. It's gone into rap, it's gone into, Sonic and Secret Rings like had this sort of Arabian sound to it. It's gone a lot of different places, and almost all these soundtracks you would listen to and never relate it with the Genesis soundtracks.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And that's what a lot of people say, but I actually think that the different places that it explored are oftentimes just as interesting as those old soundtracks. And
yeah, I really loved Sonic Unleashed or something, I think.
Yeah.
It has a different name in Japan. It's like Sonic
World Adventure.
Yeah, there you go. That one had a fantastic. That's the thing is they always do really good. They always have really good production values regardless of what they're doing. So it always just sounds great. It's the best of whatever that style is.
Exactly. So yeah, that is a very good pick, Stephen. I briefly considered it, but then, didn't put it in there, obviously, because I wanted to talk about Elder Scrolls. But yeah.
I think the funny thing about this series is there was that direct break, like with Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
but
that
it has not remained consistent. Like it's gone into so many different genres. Like the Racing Sonic Rider series gets into like this very electronic style. The Sonic Rush soundtracks emulated the Jet Set radio.
Yeah,
series.
they got.
Then you go to like something like Sonic World Adventure, and it's trying to, bring a little bit of flair from all these different world locations, such as the real world's Spagonia.
And it all was very similar before that break.
Yeah, and before that,
all the Genesis games were pretty darn similar, but then Sonic Adventure almost was like a harbinger for what was coming because there were so many different styles in that one game.
Yes, that is so true. It was switched genres mid-game. And then there was the weird period in Saturn where, Sonic R was coming out. I don't even know what happened there. But, anyway, I find it a fascinating series.
Indeed. Question number 4. Oh, unless, Jayson, you found an example.
Oh, I kind of thought of one, actually, kind of along the same lines. I was thinking Castlevania. Because you got all the gothic rock Castlevania soundtracks of old. then you have Lords of Shadow. Which was traditional orchestral score. And I thought it was really fun. It got a lot of people hated it.
Of course.
Just because they loved the classic Castlevania themes. But, I thought on its own merit, it was a really good score that Oscar Araujo did for the Lords of Shadow series. I mean, I guess it's different because they said that they were rebooting the series and it was going to be a complete departure. And who knows what'll be next. If Konami makes games anymore, other than Metal Gear and soccer.
Do they make pachinko machines? Maybe they'll make a Castlevania pachinko
that's actually
machine.
interesting to look at it that way, because like Sonic Adventure as well was a reboot. The characters got redesigned, it was in 3D, they got a new composer. Same thing with Castlevania. They got a new composer. But if you look at Nintendo, when they brought Mario into 3D and essentially rebooted it, they kept the composer. And so the music felt much more in line with the series, as if it was more like, this is the old game in 3D, while the other games were like, this is a new style of game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, at times I would talk to the producers for Lords of Shadow. I would say, hey, like I'm a fan of the old Castlevania music, and what better way to tell people like, hey, this is the universe of Castlevania than to bring back some old themes. So like you can do it in the new style, the new score style, but throw us a bone, put in like some old themes, and they actually did end up doing that.
Really?
I mean, there was they had a music box version of Vampire Killer that played in a part, and there were a reference to a couple themes in Lords of Shadow too. So it was actually really cool to hear that.
It's neat.
So yeah,
very cool.
That's a good transition into the next question, actually.
Question number 4, what tends to be your reaction to changing styles? Thank you for not putting series in that one, Stephen.
When the
Rage.
Rage.
I think that's the typical reaction to any change in life ever.
Yes.
I was thinking about this, and I didn't let myself overthink it, because I was trying to get my more of a raw reaction. So if I was just to think, hey, someone new...
Okay, Steven, we're gonna do a raw reaction here, alright?
So make something
Super Mario Sunshine 2 is coming out. It's going for a hip-hop kind of grunge soundtrack.
I was really excited until you said grunge.
Alright, hip-hop soundtrack.
I'm pumped.
Alright, Jason, your reaction to that news.
Confused.
Alright, so apparently Jason's reaction is...
That was the proper reaction.
Alright, Steve, but go ahead with your point.
I think that is my point. When I hear that, a series is doing something new with its music, I usually get super duper excited, because it means they're doing something with their music.
It means they're thinking about it.
It means they're thinking about it. It means that hopefully, if they're going out of their way to tell me they're changing something, then they care enough about the change to believe in it.
On the other hand, there's something like Sonic Boom, which is absolutely different for Sonic, but not in a good way.
And I mean,
they're thinking less about it.
That's an interesting position, because I love the Sonic the Hedgehog series, specifically the music, and I think it hit a high point with Generations, playing all the, greatest songs ever.
Yeah.
So I was remembering the good times, and so when they say Sonic Boom's coming out, and we don't really care about the music, so, hey.
Is that what they said? What did they actually say?
Well, they really haven't said anything about the music. They're focusing on everything else, and all of the pieces I've heard have been very generic electronic.
That is implied. Yeah. It is implied that they do not care at all.
Yeah, and you're right, that's just the implication. So they're not announcing it, meaning it doesn't seem like they are very excited about it.
Yeah, it seems to be the norm. It's kind of like, and it's always been frustrating having spent years writing about game audio, is like, you'd meet with producers or developers and say, hey, give me the scoop, who's doing the music for this, since nobody's been talking about that. And a lot of times they're like, oh, well, we can't really talk about it yet. And then they never announce it or talk, you end up having to find out from the game credits.
Right, exactly.
And you're like, well, why didn't you just let me tell people, and that would have been a promotional thing for the game, and da-da-da-da-da, and if you weren't going to do anything with it. So it's just kind of...
The sad fact of the matter is that I think most people would say my reaction to the music change... I don't know. I don't even think about it. Like, a game can have an extraordinary score, and people won't even notice it. They'll read critical reviews of it, and it will laud the graphics and say this is an awesome step forward of the gameplay and completely miss over the music.
Oh, I got so upset about that with Mario Kart 8. Because that game went through so much trouble to bring Mario Kart music to live instrumentation, and did such a fantastic job for it. And so many of the reviews I read, did not even mention the soundtrack in it.
Oh, Mario Galaxy, same thing. I read a ton of reviews that didn't mention Mario in an orchestra for the first time. And, honestly though, listening to go off on that tangent about Mario Kart 8, I think it's great that they did bring in live instruments, but I didn't really feel any of it. I played the game a lot, and I've been listening to it, and I'm just kind of it's Mario Kart music.
Oh man, I gotta radically disagree here. It is kind of hard to hear in the game, the sound
especially in split screen. The sounds really drown it out, unfortunately.
But, listening to it, especially apart, I was actually floored by that.
Yeah, when they showed it at the Nintendo Direct, I was very much blown away about what they were doing for it. It's not something radically different in terms of composition from earlier Mario Karts, but I think Mario Kart already had a really fun sound to it, and this just brought it to the next level, so I loved what they did in that. But yeah, Mario Galaxy, if people were not mentioning that is even more egregious, because that music was...
I think that's, speaking of that Nintendo Direct, when they do start talking about the music, that's oftentimes what sells me on a game. I pre-ordered Mario Kart because of that soundtrack. I feel like I might have ended up buying it anyway, but that's the thing that pushed me over the edge. I'm I have to support this game.
Right, because it shows they're putting thought into that, which kind of reflects on the rest of the quality of the game in a lot of ways. Because it shows that they're not just phoning it in, they're trying new things, and the music is one great avenue of that.
Now, all of that said, what about when a series is in a really good place music-wise, and they say, we're getting someone different?
That's what I was going to say. Is what your reaction is going to depend on what you thought of what it was before. If you hated it, you're going to be like, yes!
Exactly. And I feel like I'm normally, when it comes to music, ready for change, because I'm I got the old soundtrack, I can't wait to hear what they do next. But that's not always the case. Let's look to Ace Combat. Junichi Nakatsuru had it down when he was composing that.
Oh yeah.
Didn't he do all of, at least 4, 5,
5, and 6. Yeah.
And then, when they did their reboot of the franchise, essentially, it was a different composer. And I was like, why? That guy knew how to do it. Sell us on this reboot, kind of like you were saying, Jason, with Castlevania, by, letting us remember the old music and how great it was. And it turns out the way they did that was remixing the old theme song and then putting a terrible hip-hop song over it.
I don't know if it was even hip hop. It was so bad. It was rock with hip hop verses.
Bard-like.
Yeah, it was yell. It was really bad. But the rest of the music was actually fantastic.
No, it was a good soundtrack. But I'll admit I dismissed it a little bit because the game looked silly.
Oh yeah, the game was stupid.
And
but the soundtrack,
I didn't trust the person writing the music, so
yeah,
I fell into that trap.
I can't really think of an example where they announced. It'll make me sad when I just hear this composer is not coming back. Because that's telling me that they lost a talented composer, but it's not telling me that they're necessarily doing something good with the soundtrack. It might mean they're just phoning it in. When I hear, I can't recall a time where I heard the company excited about a stylistic change with its music where I was like, no, don't change that. Do you have any of those, Jason?
I guess what comes to mind is Akira Yamaoka's work on Silent Hill. Mm-hmm. And when he left the company, then they got Daniel Leaked who did, Children of the Corn and Dexter to do the score for, Silent Hill, Downpour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he ended up doing Book of Memories too. But that's basically saying, it's kind of like Final Fantasy, right? When you found out Uematsu wasn't going to do all of Final Fantasy X, or you found out he wasn't going to do Final Fantasy 12. I mean, I think everybody is, there's kind of that expectation built in that, it's always going to be this composer, and for that change, that initial shock is, well, gosh, what are they going to do with it? What's going to be different?
Yeah.
So I think it's worked really well for Final Fantasy. I feel like Uematsu is kind of doing the same things, and I guess a lot of people really like Final Fantasy IX. I'm not one of those people that really enjoyed that score a whole lot, but I feel like I was upset about it because I was such a huge fan. But then when you ended up hearing, sometimes it just ends up you have to wait and find out what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not always in the hands of the composers. Sometimes the developer says, "Oh, well, we want this sound.
Well,
here's a bunch of crappy music that we want you to try to emulate." So
sometimes they use kind of a blunt tactic of continuing the series onward. But I guess I kind of thought of an example, Brian.
What?
Halo 4. When they made a pretty big deal about announcing their new composer, and you're like, no more Martin O'Donnell, but this guy is really respectful of the series and he has his own take on it. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. And I didn't like the samples, and when it came in the game, to me, it was forgettable. And I think Halo 4 was legitimately hurt by not having the original Halo soundtrack.
I liked Halo. I liked what Neil Davidge did for Halo 4. Here's the thing is, I feel like the soundtrack album that came out was the handpicked, here's some Hollywood themes.
Uh-huh.
But some of the music that was actually in the game, the more ambient stuff, I remember writing about what I was hearing before the game was out, and I was like, this totally sounds like Metroid Prime. There were some total Metroid Prime moments in here. I'm really excited about this soundtrack. But then they didn't put that on the album.
Yeah.
But then they released a Volume 2, which had more of that stuff on it.
Oh, cool.
I should probably recheck that out then, because I was largely judging by the theme music and stuff.
You're right. It's not it's granted it's not the same, and granted I can't go back and remember a lot of Halo themes from 1 through Reach, but when I do listen to the albums in their entirety, it's this is really good stuff. And it was one of those things where in the game you'd be playing, and kind of like what I was talking about when you're listening to something passively, and all of a sudden something really strikes you, and you kind of look up and you're like, oh wait, I'm aware of this music. There was a lot of those moments in Halo that I felt for the first game through Reach, and maybe I didn't feel those as much in Halo 4.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because you'd look up when playing them as well and start noticing what the music was doing in Halo.
But then you'd go to the soundtrack album and try to find those.
Oh, gosh.
It was it's 20, how they made
the suites. Yep,
it's
it was so hard.
10 songs, and then you find that one section, it's that was only 20 seconds long.
I'm actually hoping now that Martin O'Donnell is no longer with Bungie, that 343 will hire him and say, hey, you like Halo?
But
highly doubtful, but that would be awesome.
Oh, I agree. It's unlikely, but hey.
Yeah.
All right. That is some good discussion on that. Question number 5. What are some of your favorite dramatic shifts in a series' music style?
Mario Kart 8!
All right.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be a dramatic shift in the... I guess what you're saying is we're kind of talking about the technology.
Gears.
I would actually definitely say that's stylistically not terribly dramatic, but the production and the live instruments to me was a big change.
Sure. We were just talking a lot about different shifts that have happened. What are good ones?
Final Fantasy 13 2, which I
what
absolutely.
Was that?
So Final Fantasy 13 was Masashi Hamauzu doing his kind of signature orchestral, electronic, kind of cool electronic hybrid sound. He works with a lot of piano stuff, so there's always really unique sounds that he creates. But Final Fantasy 13 2, after Hamauzu had left, they brought him back to do some stuff, but they basically did a bunch of like really serious electronic music and really well-produced pop ballads. It's like some people really hate the soundtrack. They're like, oh, I don't want all these like pop songs.
X2 all over again.
But no, way more classy, I think. Like they weren't cheesy. It wasn't meant to be
like
cheesy.
Legitimate, like songs.
Yeah, like heart-wrenching ballads, and like really some of my favorite Final Fantasy vocal music ever is from Final Fantasy 13-2 soundtrack.
That's amazing.
Right.
I've heard good things about it.
Good, because I know a lot of people hate on it. So
I feel like, Brian, did Zach ever play that game?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. He plays so many JRPGs that
You don't have to play it. Don't even play it. Just listen to it.
Music. I feel like he'd be into it.
Yeah.
I've got one.
Go.
The Rayman series, the series that
I thought of that earlier.
Can never make up its mind. With anything really. But Rayman 2, that was a really interesting twist. The first game was very happy, very all over the map. It was weird.
Yeah, much closer to what they're doing now with Origins and Legends.
It really was. But Rayman 2 took on this very mysterious, mystical sound to it. That combined with a lot of like guitar twangs and a little bit of drum beats and industrial sounds gave it this like totally, literally unheard of sound that I just thought was enchanting.
Yeah, that's actually a really good pick. And another big one is Pokemon, where it went from using that one battle theme to that other very similar battle theme.
Oh, where they changed a couple of notes?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Man, what a great idea that was, Brian.
Did you guys ever, are you guys into Medal of Honor?
Oh, I played one. I played Medal of Honor Airborne.
Well, I'm not into Medal of Honor.
Okay.
But
so why is this brought up?
For the soundtracks. So they basically had, I feel embarrassed for not being able to pronounce his name. Michael Giacchino?
You can pronounce like so many Japanese names.
And I have an Italian last name and I can't pronounce this guy's name. Giacchino. It must be Giacchino.
Okay. We'll go with
Maybe?
that.
Well, whatever. He did.
Whatever.
Huh?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So he did all of like the early, Medal of Honor soundtracks, really popular. Has done a lot of film stuff, so really well regarded composer. And then they did a reboot of Medal of Honor. And another name I can't pronounce. Ramin the guy who does Game of Thrones.
Oh, right. Yes, Game of Thrones.
He did the Medal of Honor reboot. This was like 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And completely not orchestral, completely like dark kind of atmospheric stuff, but really good. So even though I never played a game in the Medal of Honor series, I could appreciate the soundtracks.
Those first Medal of Honor games were really leaning into like war story hero kind of very traditional drama.
Yeah, lots of brass and.
Yep. So it was a big shift, but I mean, I guess it's an easy one out because it was meant to be a reboot.
Yeah, that is true. Did Tomb Raider change its music at all with its reboot, Steven, as the first year?
Yes.
It definitely did. It went for a very organic, percussion-heavy sound that sort of, it kind of sounded like the whole island was alive.
Okay.
It's actually very intricate stuff. Kind of hard to listen to on its own.
Uh-huh.
But I appreciate it.
Oh, cool. And the old stuff was...
It's really hard to remember except for
That's what I thought.
It was very like... Wait. Actually, I only remember the theme. I don't know. I think it was different, though.
I couldn't tell you. I just know that the latest one with Jason Graves was really good, and I can't recall, like you said, the early Tomb Raider stuff.
I feel really silly because I've played multiple Tomb Raider games, and I always listen to music, but I can't remember. I'm sorry.
No problem. So any other... go ahead, Jason.
What is the prompt? I'm trying to, because I feel like we've talked about a lot of interrelated things between the questions. What's this prompt again?
Yes, I was just getting back to that. Favorite dramatic shifts in a series music
Favorite
style?
dramatic shifts. Yeah, Final Fantasy 13-2 is probably up there. Dramatic shifts though, yeah. Because like you said, like Mario Kart and Mario Galaxy, they're kind of not dramatic shifts.
That's
but
interesting, I would actually count Mario Galaxy as a pretty dramatic shift to go from like, Mario Sunshine to like a full orchestra playing these massive, sweeping epics.
Yeah, maybe you're right. So that would be one of my favorites.
Yeah, sure. I think there we go.
A nice obvious one would be Wind Waker. Nintendo. I think that the theme to going for that very, seafaring, Celtic kind of sound, all of it really added.
Bard-like.
It was very like a Bard-like.
I thought that was. Yep.
And there were likes, I believe.
There were no, that actually there were not likes.
No likes in the Bard like?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
It's kind of funny. One thing I'm noticing is a lot of the time we'll bring up a reboot, like Medal of Honor, Tomb Raider. Probably Sonic Adventure was a reboot. But it's kind of interesting when just a side project comes out and they totally change the music for it. Like, example, the Sonic Rush series, where they suddenly turned everything Jet Set Radio style.
Right.
Which, by the way, is one of my favorite departures ever for video game music.
That was super fantastic. I agree. So question number 6. This is the 6th question, in case that was confusing.
Okay.
What do you think about shifting styles / consistency in a single game? So, as a writer of this question, Steven, do you have an example of like what?
Reading it back, it looked very confusing.
Yeah, and I'm sure you had something in your head when you put it down. I'm getting some.
I definitely did.
All right, so go ahead.
Let me see if I can relate with my past self and tell you about it. I guess what I'm saying is some games have a really tight rein on the theme. For example, let's say Skyrim really knows what it's doing. Every song sounds like it could be played next to the other song.
Right.
Then you look at something like, let's bring up our old friend that I just won't let go of, Sonic Adventure. That went through multiple genres. It had multiple artists and composers. There was a rap song, there was a rock song, there was a jazz song, on and on and on.
Uh-huh.
If you didn't know any better, you might think they were all from different games.
Right.
So, what do you think about that? Do you think that it's a nice, spice of variety when a game can change, on its heel like that? Or do you think it can be a bit lame and, poor consistency and thematic?
I think it depends on the game, right? If you're playing a racing game where there's a distinct cut in the gameplay experience where, you're doing a race and you got a rock song for this level and now you're doing the race and it's a hip hop song for this level. And I think maybe you're more forgiving. If you look at, the thing is, I don't know if I agree with your Sonic Adventure. I think even though that the songs are different in style, I think there's still kind of a interconnectivity, a theme of cheesiness.
For lack of a better word.
And I agreed. No, I think that's the best word.
You can comb through all the languages on planet Earth, and you'd never be able to find a word that's
more fitting than cheesiness. I agree with you though, Jason, and on Sonic Adventure, where you can, and I think it may point to how it's kind of a good example of bringing variety in that in a lot of its variety in the stage design, you look at it has a very different song for its ice level compared to its casino level compared to its base level, and that's very true to Sonic on the Genesis. It was bringing that schizophrenic, almost you're in this world, now you're in this world, now you're in this world feel to its stage design. In terms of the character themes, I thought that also worked because all the characters were very different, vibrant personalities, so it shows different, vibrant types of music for each one. Big the Cat would have a completely different theme song than Knuckles. And I think in Sonic Adventure 2, they went for a different idea where it was all kind of edgy and dark around the same kind of styles. And then it would just change up what type of style it was doing depending on whose stage, what character you were playing the stage as.
That's true. And in that, the thematic consistency is perhaps at the heart of the matter.
So I think it goes down to that where, like, it's not so much is consistency within a game good or bad, but it's this question of does the game's theme support this dramatic changing of styles, or does it feel at odds with what the game is trying to portray? A game like Skyrim is very grounded. It would feel very odd to have a jazz theme pop up for one of the dragons in Skyrim. It would not fit what the game's overarching theme and narrative is. So I'm curious, are there any times we can think of where soundtrack just went beyond the bounds of what the game was trying to tell?
I mean, I'm sure there's I know that there's probably examples where it was like a kind of like a joke where maybe, maybe it's like really serious subject matter, but they're playing some like goofy theme or whatever.
Well, I have one that a lot of people would point to, which is Dragon's Dogma.
Oh, with the theme song.
The theme song is basically like J-pop.
I love that song.
I love it.
Like more,
but it's really jarring and never makes any sort of appearance or consistency with the rest of the game at all.
So it's like you can kind of laugh along with it.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking critically, that totally breaks the immersion. It totally breaks the spirit of the game.
Mm-hmm. So
and
that one
like you were saying though, Brian, you were saying Sonic Adventure is a good example. Regardless of the quality of Sonic Adventure or its sequels, soundtrack, I actually feel like Sonic Adventure 2 had a much better way of going about it. Because it went into all sorts of genres from, hip hop to, kind of cheesy rock. And yet, it didn't just do the ice level, the casino level, the jungle level. All of the music sounded like it could be performed by, like, essentially the same small handful of bands and artists.
Yeah, I think the reason Sonic Adventure didn't go as much with that style is because they wanted multiple characters to be playing the same level, so they couldn't design a level song around the character you were playing as. Sonic Adventure 2 got rid of that idea, and every level is unique to the character you're playing as, so they went with, 6 different styles, basically.
Because
and each the styles completely
are really trying to fit whatever emotion is happening at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So
making that character-based instead of environment-based is just something that, honestly, games very rarely do.
Yeah.
Almost always music is environmental unless it's a character theme. The idea of Sonic Adventure 2 making all of the levels basically character themed, as dumb as they sometimes were, all of Knuckles' songs were like sung by Knuckles, which is a really interesting idea, even though they were really bad songs.
That's a very good point. There's a lot of thematic consistency to respect when speaking of pumpkin soup.
Oh, that's what song I was just thinking about. It's so good.
I can sense it in my feet. Oh, wow.
No, I saw the one where he says, no, I'm thinking it was was it a remix album where he says, what does he say? Like, I'm hard as nails.
No, that's just
hard to tell.
Sure. Knock him down while they're solid or frail.
You probably don't want to know this, Jason, but we could quote the whole song for you.
Here I come, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles. Unlike Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles.
Yeah, let's not. We've done that. I'm pretty positive.
I used to have
on multiple podcast episodes.
I used to have when my brother and I would take like long trips. We would like 7-9 hour driving trips. We would this is back in the day. We would burn a mixtape, a CD. We would burn a CD that had it was basically just like the goofiest game music tracks. So we had like a lot of Sonic Adventure on there. Oh. We had like this Mario remix, One Up, Runaway. It was like this really bad English song, and we just had like a collection of Mystical Ninja 64.
Wow! Yeah. Please find that CD and upload it somewhere.
It was so good, but we would just sit there and laugh the entire time and sing along with these stupid songs. But
that's amazing.
But not to call. Yeah, I guess I am calling this song stupid.
That's fair.
We won't kick you off the show. I'm pretty sure we had the discussion about the Sonic Adventure Knuckles rap
On the first episode?
On the first episode, Jayson.
I bet so.
Oh, well, it's just, it's something that, when you come back and you say, what is something silly? It's one of the first things that comes to mind.
Yeah. So it has a lasting legacy in its own way.
Yeah. I've been sitting here thinking while you guys have been talking this whole time about, is there a soundtrack that I could say, like, God, that didn't fit with the game at all? And I can't think of a single example, maybe because it's kind of like memory bias. Like you just, you're like, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to remember this. So I can't really think of a good example where that happened. Or but I'm sure go ahead.
I was going to say, or sometimes maybe you would define the scene or something about a game by the music and you don't realize the intent was completely different. Because the music colored you to see that scene in a different way. So, for example, from the designer's perspective, maybe the designer's thinking, no, that music completely does not fit that scene, but you don't realize that because the music colored how you see that now. So maybe we're not even always aware of when the music doesn't fit a game.
Wow, it's like Inception.
Yes, because music can be what colors, if ominous music is playing or cheery music is playing, honestly, I think that affects whether a game is scary or tense more than pretty much any element. If happy music is playing and upbeat music, pretty much any horror game is not made scary unless they're very explicitly twisting it. So yeah, a music could change something that otherwise would feel completely different with a more fitting soundtrack.
I wonder what games are like for people who turn off the music in their games and just listen to Nickelback the whole time.
We don't like to talk about those people.
And we know that the only soundtrack of choice for them is Nickelback.
Yeah. It's funny. All right. So question number 7, the last question about this topic. What are some series, thank you, Stephen, that need a new direction? Wait, are we saying that need new direction to make the music? I don't know.
The intent of this question is to say a series that needs one direction to, come in and rewrite the music for them.
That's what I was wondering. Yes. So,
nay. That is not the intent. The intent is to find a series that you're currently unsatisfied with, musically, and something that needs a refresher.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog. 100% same thing. Sonic Lost World is one of the only Sonic the Hedgehog soundtracks that disappointed me. And I think they're gonna do it again, and I'm real sad.
Was Sonic 4 any good? Because isn't that supposed to be kind of like a return to the synthy... Was it bad? I didn't end up listening to it or playing it, so...
Yeah. Musically and gameplay-wise, it was pretty lame.
Did they ever finish it?
No.
It stopped.
That says it all.
It really does. Oh, man.
But yeah, I guess, with a couple exceptions, Sonic has been, I don't know, I've never really liked this whole pop rock thing that they were going for, but I did like, Sonic Unleashed, and I did like Sonic Generations, and even Sonic Colors had a really good soundtrack, but,
You see, the thing about Sonic music, is that the pop rock is usually only for the theme music, and the level music is kind of more normal video game stuff. So, in general. But that's a series that I think could really use a big shift. Brian, did you bring any?
Sonic is kind of the one that jumped out for me.
Yeah. He seems to be the star of this, particular episode.
Well, Sonic does change tempo a lot.
Yeah, that's super true.
So, I'll see if I can think of something off the top of my head.
One, and it's not that I dislike the music from the series, but Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
New Leaf is delightful. The music is very nice, but sometimes it's a little bit boring and a little bit, kind of generically cartoonish in a way.
Yeah, the original got something really unique down. I don't know if they can just recapture that, so maybe trying something else would be smart.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth going for that really quirky drum and bass.
Style. I didn't play Dragon Age 2, but I'm extremely excited to see they're going to use someone other than Einenzer for their soundtracks going forward. Not because I have any particular problem with that composer, but just because how he was doing Dragon Age was very drab, I think.
I kind of have a problem with that composer. Unless he comes on the show, in which case he's my friend.
I haven't heard enough of him. I know he did some of the Soul Calibur soundtrack in Dragon Age.
No, it's he's a great guy. Yeah. And I probably shouldn't be saying this, but yeah, I haven't been there hasn't been really a whole lot of music that he's done for games that I've been like, wow, I need to go listen to that again.
Yeah. The theme and Liliana's song are two things from Dragon Age that were fantastic, but I feel the rest of it got very drab. And that was, part of it suited the environment, but part of it, I think, that whole game could have been uplifted by a more, imaginative soundtrack. I think the soundtrack was kind of miring that game, much like the graphic style was. I think
there was a lot about that game.
The writing and design of that game could have been so much more if the production team kept up with it, I think, in a lot of ways. So that's one and they're going with a new direction. I've heard some of the stuff from Dragon Age Inquisition, and it is fantastic. It is, really getting to be more imaginative and mysterious and evocative. So I'm really excited to see what they're doing with that.
Yes, me too. But like,
that question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, Jason, what do you think?
I was gonna say, that question is like kind of tough because on one hand, it doesn't. Sometimes you would be curious to hear what something would sound like through a different lens, but you're not necessarily disappointed with how it currently sounds. So like you could say, oh, well, Mega Man or even Mario, like, wouldn't it be cool to hear somebody else's interpretation of how they see that world musically? Like,
that's a fair way to interpret the question. And I think I kind of did that with Animal Crossing. Like, I like the current music from that series, but I would sure like to see them try something else.
Yeah, and that might be part of the same composer working on something forever, or, that kind of thing. But, like Mega Man 9 had the novelty of returning back to, 8-bit era, and you were like, oh my god, this is like a classic Mega Man soundtrack. But then Mega Man 10, you're like, alright. Like, yeah, we kind of already did that.
So since people have been writing and rewriting Mega Man music for so many years.
It's like its own genre.
Yes.
So, and I feel like Mario the same way. I mean, it feels to me like it's the same music style that it's always been, except they've been able to, record live instruments now, which is fantastic. But it would be kind of cool to see what somebody would do if they were to record like a serious Mario soundtrack. Like, wait, what would that sound like? Or if someone was to record, like an electronic Mario soundtrack, what would that sound like? Kind of thing. So it almost opens it up to be like, wouldn't it be cool to have a contest for people to rescore some famous game that everybody loves the soundtrack to and see if anybody likes it different?
Yeah. Yeah, like a top to bottom rescoring would be really interesting.
Yeah, even Lords of Shadow, where people were upset that it took a different direction and went classical. What if someone was to re-record the soundtrack in the gothic rock style?
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to see.
I feel like the closest you really get to that is like with things like OC Remix, where it's like everyone, kind of rescore the Mario 64 soundtrack, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But
see, it's not like they're not scoring it in a sense where they're like, okay, this is like Dire Docks, it's a water level. Instead of going like a different style of a water level, I'm just going to do like a polka version just because it's a remix.
You just trying to think of something zany.
I want a polka version of Dire Docks now, but yes, you guys have a deeper point than that, but just pointing that out.
So it's kind of, the series that needs a new direction though. I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff you like because you want more of it because you like it.
Yeah.
So I can't really I'm trying to think of a time I've written a review where I've said, it's another X soundtrack that sounds just like the last 10.
Dragon Quest?
X. Yeah, but it's one of those ones where I feel like
it's
I feel like if someone was to pick up the reins from Sugiyama, it would be in a similar vein. I mean, I think they're going to still want a classical soundtrack.
I think a series I'd like to see a soundtrack change is Metroid, and I'd like to change it to Existing.
Other M. My God, like they made a big deal of that composer. Actually,
was it good? I don't remember the soundtrack because I really didn't like the game.
There really wasn't a whole lot of music, and what was there was really ambient. I mean, granted, Metroid soundtracks always are.
Yeah.
But there was like a lot of silence, which was kind of cool because it added like survival horror elements. Mm-hmm. But there was like a couple spots where you played the game. And you remember there was this part where you're out in this green field and one of the guys gets killed. You're following the girl into that facility, and then like you're supposed to find something on the ground that was impossible to find.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
There's a song that plays during that, and it's actually one of the only, like, melodies in the whole game. So if you go look up, like, the game soundtrack rips or whatever, it's like green something, because I think you're looking for
Green Hill?
Green Hill Zone, yeah. But no, the soundtrack wasn't very good.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you go back to Metroid Prime, and you had Kenji Yamamoto working on it, I feel like he just like that was kind of that question where they did the reboot, but they kept the same composer. Where it still had that feel, and he still worked in some old themes. Mm-hmm. So even though it was completely updated and upgraded, it still had that Metroid soundscape.
The thing I always remember from that game is being like in these ancient Chozo ruins, and you'd have like, you know, that sort of deep male choir a little bit in the background, but you'd also just have this drum beat start up, just going.
That's the Chozo ruins too, or Chozo ruins.
It's so cool. Like, who thought of that? Like, to have this very snappy modern drum beat in this ancient place.
Because you're this technological bounty hunter in an ancient. It was awesome. Such a good contrast. The whole game.
I'm glad you were able to replicate that drum beat, because that's my favorite track from the game.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, but when you look at Metroid Prime 2, there was that submerged temple, which was the worst part in any Metroid game ever. Right. I don't know if you guys agree, but it was awful.
I vaguely remember it.
But they played the red swampy soil area track from Super Metroid. It was a remix.
Ah.
And so when I interviewed the composer through email, he says like, yeah, you know, I had a fan tell me that when they came to that area and heard that song, like it brought back so many memories that they cried. And that was really memorable for him. And I was like, yeah, well, like, that's really cool.
I cried for completely different reasons on that area.
Yeah, I was stuck there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And interestingly, that's the first game I ever reviewed as a member of the gaming media.
Wow. What did you give it?
I gave it I want to say a 9.
Oh, wow, that's pretty high.
Yeah. It was pretty high. I probably didn't deserve that.
I really liked it, but there were some problems I had with it compared to the first and even the third.
Yeah, it was my least favorite of the 3.
Yeah, me too, for sure. All right, that about wraps it up. We have one last question here, which is a very important question, especially for you, Jason. What have you been working on?
Well, we kind of touched on a lot of that in the beginning.
Yeah.
The artist group is the big thing. But in terms of the record label, people will be interested in is we launched an album called Prescription for Sleep, Game Music Lullabies.
And I believe, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm pretty sure when you talked with us on the first episode, that was just starting to get off the ground. I don't even know if we talked about it in the episode or just off air, but
What month was it that we recorded that?
I don't know. I have to look it up.
February or something, I think?
Early this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that point, I think I had a track list and I had sent the original source files to the artists to start their arrangements and get ready to record, because they recorded it in February.
Okay.
And so what this is it's 10 tracks from across gaming, and basically we've taken the songs and had them arranged and performed live on saxophone and piano in a way to relax and sleep to. And we have the performers Gentle Love, which is a duo. The saxophone player Norihiko Hibino was a composer at Konami, and he's known for his work on the Metal Gear Solid series. He did a lot of music for Metal Gear Solid 2, but most notably he did Snake Eater. He's the saxophone player and composer of the theme, Snake Eater.
Which is the best part of that entire game.
Yeah, absolutely. So he and his piano player friend got together in the studio. We have tracks. We have Dire Dire Docks from Mario 64. We have Aquatic Ambience from Donkey Kong Country. We have a track from Demon Souls, which was meant to be a curveball because everybody's like, lullabies, how does Demon Souls fit into that? Yeah. But it actually does. And we got Nier, which I had to include. We got Secret of Mana. We got Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy VII. And so a lot of great music. And they basically went into the studio, did these huge 7 to 9 minute long performances, and that's available now on Louder.
That's rad. Actually, during this recording, I purchased it, so I'm looking forward to listening to that.
Good for you.
And what I've been telling people is I already have a set list mostly picked out for Volume 2. And, I've been kind of on a couple different programs and kind of divulging some of the stuff that I want to include. But
that's great.
Definitely what I want to include on the second volume, because I didn't think about it for the first volume, was Snake Eater, if I can.
Uh-huh.
So if this does well enough, I have a set list picked out. I'm going to have one of my favorite tracks from Final Fantasy IV, Troyan Beauty, on there, and 8 other songs.
Nice.
That we'll go ahead and get into the studio and record a volume 2. But that's the big thing right now. It has the 10 tracks. It comes with a digital booklet that's on Louder, and actually, you don't have to even pay for the album to get the digital booklet. If you go to louder.fm and look for Prescription for Sleep, and you read the information about the album, there's an embedded link where you can download the booklet, which has credits, it has my liner notes, it has a little interview with Hibino about the album. So that's something that people can grab for free. So that's one thing. I'm mulling over a couple ideas for Kickstarter campaigns, actually.
Man. Have you ever done a Kickstarter before? Was that?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No. So it's weird that I have like 3 in my mind right now. But one is for an arrangement project that I want to do for a RPG game that is going to be celebrating a big anniversary next year. And would love to completely redo, kind of reorchestrate, rearrange the soundtrack. And then another one is a concept album between 2 famous old school composers, kind of doing an image album.
So Jayson, where can people find you if they want to tweet at you about how you should put Snake Eater in your next album?
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting point that you made, is that the first Prescription for Sleep album, even though a lot of the selections were stuff that I really wanted to be on there, some of it was inspired by an article I wrote on Destructoid about top 10 game music tracks to sleep to. Mm-hmm. And so some of the tracks on this first volume are songs not that I had selected in that top 10, but tracks that people commented on in the comments. So basically, fans had kind of decided several of the track choices. So by all means, I'd love to hear more if I can do a second volume. It's scarletmoonproductions.com, and that's the portal to get to the blog where we do news and reviews, the PR side, the record label side, and now the artist group. And then the Twitter name is Scarlet Moon LLC. So you can follow us there, keep up to date on what we're doing. We actually have a promotion going on right now for anyone who purchases one of our physical products, which are sold through Bandcamp. It's scarletmoonrecords.bandcamp.com. We have Dragon Fantasy Book 2 soundtrack by Dale North and the Monarch Heroes of a New Age soundtrack by Gumin Nam from Korea left in stock, and anyone who buys those gets a free physical copy of Blade Mode. Wow. And what Blade Mode is a CD by an artist, Chris Huber, who goes by the name Croth now, I guess. But anyway, he attended MagFest this year. It was his first MagFest, and he thought, well, gosh, if I'm going to go to MagFest, I should have some, a CD. So he made arrangements. I think there's 7 tracks on the album. It's basically like a metal style, and he features on it Stemage, Norg, and Ailshan, who are all well known.
Nice.
They have appearances on the album, and I have a good handful of albums left over for MagFest. So I'm basically just throwing those in for free for whoever picks up a physical album from the label.
Very cool.
Well, that is cool.
And yeah,
I'm going to leave so many comments and send you so many tweets about suggestions for the next absolutely ideas.
So
very good.
One last question: how would for your artist program, do you like people to reach out to you, or do you normally try to find and handpick different artists to put in your profile?
So are we talking about the artist group?
Yeah, exactly.
It was handpicked, and I currently have 9, and I think I'm going to leave it at 9. just because it kind of looks good on the website.
It does, yeah.
It's kind of like the 9-panel Robot Masters from Mega Man. So
I didn't realize that.
So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other guys I would love to have on there, friends and composers and whatnot. But definitely, I'm probably going to keep with what I got for now. And as people decide, they want to seek other services, or they're not at a point where they're interested in the services, I may pick up other artists to replace them. But yeah, it's just the 9 for now. But by all means, anyone artists out there who want to get the word out about what they're doing, that's what the PR services are for. And I do that a la carte. I charge. Most of the systems are a retainer where you pay a monthly fee, but I kind of just work with people to make it happen, because I know that not everybody is working on AAA titles and have the budgets to do big PR. So that's kind of why I started doing it in the first place, was to kind of do it for everybody, do it for the small guy. And so that's kind of what I would offer to people who would like to be on the roster, but I'm full, so they can't.
All right.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's super cool, because there's a lot of obscure stuff that you would never find anywhere else coming through Scarlet Moon, which is pretty neat as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and that's the idea with the labels. It's kind of catered. I think we probably talked about that the first episode, but kind of my own selfish selection of, I want people to hear this.
Right, that's the really cool thing about Scarlet Moon, is it's created because you want the stuff to exist, not necessarily because you wanted the money from it or whatsoever. That all seems kind of secondary for it. So
so if
really
anybody out there has some great music that they know of and that's not available for sale, and they know the composer, and that composer wants to put it out there, by all means, I'm all game. So,
nice.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a good time as always.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. This has been great. We will definitely be asking you to come on again, probably talking about Volume 2 at some point.
We'll probably just keep asking you to come on the show until you refuse.
There you go. Every 14 episodes.
Yes, on the dot. Yeah, I look forward to episode 28.
Yep. Hopefully there'll be a Volume 2 by then. We'll see.
Hopefully. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at TrainStation8. Or shoot us an email at trainstation8@gmail.com. I love saying that. Most importantly, you can check us out on iTunes and subscribe or leave us a review. This is especially helpful for us because iTunes reviews are like one of the primary ways podcasts get growth. I know some people hate Apple and all that, but really iTunes is still the go-to platform for podcasts. So if you'd like to leave us a review, especially a 5-star review, that would be totally awesome. We have one of those currently, and we would love to get some more. Just to avoid some feed confusion, right now we still have 2 feeds up. Go for the one where the author of the feed is Whales Are Whales, not Train Station 8, and also the one where you'll be seeing this episode on there, because the other one isn't updated. But you might be listening to this on something else, so just wanted to update you on that. And finally, Train Station at 8 is a production of Whales Are Whales. You can find more shows like this with people like us on Whales Are Whales at whalesorewhales.com, or check us out on Twitter at surprise Whales Are Whales. Don't actually put the surprise in there. And that covers it. So again, thank you, Stephen, for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jason, for coming.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next week, say goodbye to the monkey porter.